Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton face arguably their fiercest fight yet in Formula 1, so how has Hamilton racked up his best ever start to a season? The 7-time world champion is clearly at the top of his game in pursuit of an 8th title, and Mercedes has pulled out a couple of strategic masterstrokes. They went into the Spanish Grand Prix weekend happily playing up the narrative that Max Verstappen and Red Bull have been making too many mistakes. With 4 races now complete and Hamilton holding a 14-point lead in the championship, patterns are beginning to emerge, and while errors from Verstappen and Red Bull are part of that, the picture's a bit more complicated. If you like this video and want to show us some love, you can hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons at any time, while we run through what Red Bull's done wrong, where it's simply being outgunned, and how the epic Hamilton vs Verstappen fight continues to play out in wheel-to-wheel combat. Red Bull did start the season with the fastest car, as over the last 2 races in Portugal and Spain, it's become clear that the 2 cars are now incredibly evenly matched. It looks like any fundamental advantage Red Bull had has now been eliminated. Hamilton and Mercedes have delighted in twisting that particular knife, referencing errors made by their rivals and suggesting that was the only reason that Mercedes led the championships before the Spanish Grand Prix. Now, before we go any further, we should stress that the single biggest mistake from a championship protagonist this season has been made by Hamilton when he went off at Imola and fell a lap down. He massively got away with that, as the red flag shortly after put him back on the same lap as everyone else and set up his recovery to second. But in sheer quantity and regularity, it's Red Bull and Verstappen who are making small and potentially costly errors. In Bahrain, Verstappen only had 1 chance to pass Hamilton for the win and made a mistake while doing it, going off track in the process of overtaking him. And Verstappen had lost the lead in the first place because Red Bull had been jumped by Mercedes, putting Hamilton on a more aggressive strategy. Had the race at Imola been dry, Verstappen would likely have been counting the cost of going wide onto the grass in qualifying and losing pole. And in Portugal, where Mercedes did look like it had a slightly better car overall, Verstappen should have started from pole again, but had his best lap deleted for track limits and got nowhere near it on the second attempt. He then lost a point for fastest lap in the race for exceeding track limits again. That is an undeniable trend, and even if they are tiny errors, they come with big consequences in a title fight, especially one up against Hamilton and Mercedes. So what about in Spain? Did Red Bull cost itself another win there? Well, there was definitely another mistake, as Verstappen inexplicably came in for his first pit stop from the lead without being called in by Red Bull. The team wasn't expecting him and his stop took twice as long as normal, which could have cost him the lead, but Mercedes opted not to retaliate with an instant pit stop for Hamilton. Verstappen got away with that error because he kept track position and he lost the race elsewhere. But did Red Bull miss a trick there as well, or was this simply an unavoidable defeat? The Mercedes and the Red Bull are phenomenally evenly matched over 1 lap, but retain quite different traits, especially in the way they use their tyres. And that is swinging things towards Mercedes in the races, because while the Red Bull gets the tyres up to temperature quicker, the Mercedes keeps them in shape for longer. Mercedes planned its whole Spanish Grand Prix weekend around having 2 sets of medium tyres available for the race. Red Bull didn't, and Verstappen had 1 set each of mediums and softs. In hindsight, that seems remiss, because of the 2 cars, it's the Red Bull which more urgently needs to have the longer lasting rubber. But it's because Red Bull was expecting this to be a simple one-stop race. Another key pre-race decision was Red Bull choosing to shed the higher downforce rear wing that would have provided more grip and helped with tyre management, but probably created too much drag and left Verstappen vulnerable down the main straight. In the race, Verstappen stole the lead at turn 1 but had to run at a harder pace in the opening stint, with Hamilton breathing down his neck and able to keep his tyres alive despite being so close in the Red Bull's dirty air. They pulled a gap on the field behind over the first 2 stints, and Mercedes pulled the pin by switching to a 2-stop strategy, bringing Hamilton in for another set of new mediums with 24 laps still to go. He emerged 22 seconds behind the Red Bull and ate into that gap relentlessly, and by the time Hamilton caught up, Verstappen's aching tyres left him powerless to respond. As the race turned into a 2-stop game, should Red Bull have anticipated that and dropped into the gap before Mercedes had the chance to? It would have been brave to give up the lead, knowing that had they done so, Mercedes would likely have left Hamilton out on track. Furthermore, all Verstappen had left was that set of softs, which would be quick for 2 or 3 laps but then drop much faster than the mediums. For the same reason, responding to Hamilton's pit stop with a second one for Verstappen was out of the question. So Verstappen, who said after the race that the Red Bull was simply too slow to do anything different to win this Grand Prix, was left a sitting duck. One stop was the wrong strategy on the day, but it wasn't the crucial difference. This time the Mercedes was simply the faster car over a race distance, even if there was nothing in it over a single lap. And both those hard facts arose from the way they worked the tyres, something which Hamilton and the team between them made clinical use of. This was probably the most resounding of any victory this year, and even then the outcome hung in the balance for a little while. The fight is much closer than the results to date make it look. The best thing about the Spanish Grand Prix was our 100% record of races with wheel-to-wheel fights between Hamilton and Verstappen this season continued, but it was closer than ever to ending in tears. Even Verstappen's team boss Christian Horner admitted afterwards that the two drivers would have probably ended up in the fence at the start had Hamilton not taken evasive action at turn 1. Horner described the first corner send as full Max Verstappen, and he's right, and that's what makes Verstappen such a fierce rival for Hamilton and such an entertaining driver for us to watch. But that approach does require his fellow drivers to cooperate. Verstappen has that cooperation with Hamilton, at least for now. We've made an entire video about that, which you should check out after this one if you've not already seen it. But the opening lap pass at Barcelona felt like the hardest move yet, an escalation of what we've seen so far, even if it was still just about in the realms of what's acceptable. With the speed Verstappen was taking into the first corner, the move would almost certainly have ended in contact had Hamilton not checked up. Hamilton's racecraft isn't perfect, but he tends to get the big judgment calls right, and this was another such moment. He wouldn't have been at fault had they collided, but being able to say it wasn't my fault would be little consolation if Hamilton was saying it with his battered Mercedes parked at the side of the track and 0 points being added to his championship tally. Hamilton admitted he could be more aggressive, but rightly pointed out he is where he is because he doesn't pick fights he doesn't have to. It's a champion's mentality, and what we saw at turn 1 at Barcelona was a champion's play, demonstrating a command of the broader picture. At the time, he'd have never known he'd go on to win the race. This was just about living to fight another day. But Hamilton did enjoy the ultimate payoff a few laps from the end, when he swept past Verstappen to take the lead in the very place he'd lost it a little over an hour earlier. So what do you think is going to be the most important factor in this title battle? Small but significant mistakes, how the two cars use their tyres, strategic plays, or out and out wheel banging between the two drivers? Let us know what you think in the comments, leave us a thumbs up if you enjoyed our video, and if you want to come back for more, make sure you're subscribed as well.